blindness. I'm just blind. Okay. And I'm not a parent, okay? And also, by the time I became blind, I was already in my teens. So you may wonder, what am I here to sharing with parents about bringing up blind children? Nevertheless, I'll give you a brief account of my own life, how I became blind, what challenges I faced, and later some ideas, all my personal ideas, how I think what's important bringing up children in general, and particularly the blind children. Second slide. Okay, before I became blind, this is how I was told when I was about 2 years old. I actually approached my mother, from her bed while she was removing husk from a coconut. And as she lifted the knife over her shoulders, the point caught my eye. It happened to be the right eye. That was how I lost my sight in the in the right eye. That was age 2. Unfortunately, my parents, especially my father, got very upset over the incident, and they quarreled and separated. Their separation also resulted in me being separated from my mother. I followed my father and grandfather to another place where they worked as rubber tappers. And by the time I was 7, I was actually a rubber tapper. I was enlisted to help them in the rubber estate. My job was, of course, not tapping. It's just to empty the cups of scraps and rainwater while they followed me, tapping the trees. But even though it may seem child labor, but actually that's the time when I actually felt, peaceful. Life was peaceful, life was meaningful. I was involved with the families, what they are doing. But this serene life came to an abrupt end when my 2 old folks quarreled. And you can guess what would they quarrel over: money. And because of a serious dispute, they also parted company. And I was left with my grandfather, who soon found me to be a bit of a burden. And on the advice of a priest that he came across, I only discovered that recently, he sent me to a Christian orphanage. That's how, at age 8, I was taken to this Vishnami home in Ipoh for boys. There, actually I was quite miserable, I think any child would, being separated from family. But add to that, I was treated quite badly. You are nobody's child. And being the only Indian in 80 group of boys who are Chinese, all the more you become the odd one out, get bullied. And it was in that home that I learned the difficult part of life. Because firstly, I couldn't attend school. They told me because my father, in a fit of rage, tore my birth certificate. I had no chance to confirm with him, of course. So I was left to be the general worker at the home. In particular, I was the kitchen help, helping the cook in preparing food, cleaning the kitchen. This went on until one fateful day. One of the seniors there who was overseeing us was quite upset over an incident that he thought I was guilty of, you know. So he hit me, and it was not intended, but that's how, by his, you know, assault that injured my left eye. This was when I was about 12 years old. And since then, that means I actually became blind very suddenly. It's a different experience than, let's say, you're born blind or gradually becoming blind. And initially, of course, the trauma did not hit me. You know, something like I was in a state of shock, took it quite calmly. The grieving, the loss began to set in only much later. And actually I experienced, of course, not only sadness, soon I was angry, bitter, you know, felt the injustice, and depression. All this actually took years. It doesn't happen suddenly. And even in those days, I think even now quite true, you don't get the benefit of people who understand and would counsel you, you know. And blind people who are going through, you know, sudden blindness or gradually becoming blind, very often are left to their own devices to adjust emotionally and psychologically. Next slide. Now, after becoming blind, suddenly I could go to school. That's the amazing thing. So I came to St. Nicholas at age 13, St. Nicholas Home for the Blind. It was very exciting attending school. You know, it was a new environment, actually an environment I've never seen. At least the Salvation Army Home I've seen. This was a new environment I've never seen. And there are a lot of new friends. Furthermore, having friends who actually share your disability is a very different experience than in a group where all the rest can see and you are the odd one out. And a lot of interesting things to learn. And one of the things, challenge that I faced at age 13 was trying to learn Braille. Initially, of course, when I was first introduced to Braille, it seems such a strange jumble of dots, you know. And one of my classmate was telling me, this is 6 dogs. So I thought, dogs. If one symbol represents 6 dogs, how many more symbols you have to learn to represent any other things? Only later I came to realize it means dots. You see, these are some things not conveyed very well. But, you know, learning Braille, though it took me some months to master it, but once I've learned, a whole library of books was open to me. And it was actually a great joy. You know. I was so, what you might say, engrossed in reading. I stopped reading textbooks by reading library books. But that's the joy of it. In fact, the two great things, the two most valuable things that school gave me were Braille and books. And until today, I'm still glad. I'm never dull because there are books. And next is, of course, I continued my education to secondary schools, actually various schools. Started with St. Xavier's Institute. This is actually mainstream schooling, it's not a special school. And I continued to KL at the Stapak School for the Blind, Jalan Temerloh School, and finally at St. John's Institute.